All right, hello and welcome to Inside the Publisher Lab, the show behind the show. This is where we dive deeper into subjects that we discuss on the regular Publisher Lab. I get the two confused sometimes, Shelby.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a mouthful to say Inside the Publisher Lab next to the Publisher Lab.
I thought that maybe we could come up with cool abbreviations for them, but those are actually even harder to remember and more confusing.
Well, if our audience can come up with any abbreviations, let us know.
You got PL and IPL, and it sounds like we're going to be drinking beer, I feel like, if we're going to go
that's
down
probably
that road.
not a bad message to kind of put out there, so maybe.
So what did we decide we wanted to dive in deeper on that we discussed on the show today?
Yeah, so today in the podcast we talked about lazy loading and how Google has released a document to kind of help webmasters make sure that lazy loading content gets crawled and indexed and all that jazz. But you wanted to dig a little bit deeper into...
Dive or dig, whatever we decide we want to go with.
Into site speed.
Yeah, so website speed, and specifically when we were talking about lazy loading, your question was, provide a little bit better description of what that is, right? So lazy loading or asynchronous loading is basically the idea that the stuff that's important loads after the stuff that's important to the user. So all the different things you have on your page, they're all important, right? You shouldn't have things on your site that aren't important, but for the user, they view things a little bit differently, right? Your content, stuff that they want to interact with, their ability to scroll through stuff, you want that material to load first, right? So lazy loading basically says, all that stuff we're going to load first, and then everything else we're going to load a little bit later. And maybe that stuff at the bottom of the page, we're going to get to it later too, because the stuff at the top is maybe more important as well. So asynchronous loading, lazy loading, these are methods that you can basically utilize to ensure that content is loading a little bit faster for the users.
Yeah, so it's just kind of prioritizing what loads first.
Right, and I think this is really important to understand because in the context of, we were talking about page speed tools is a tool that a lot of people use to measure website speed. And what did we say about that?
There's a lot of factors that go into website speed.
Right, and so to really drill it down and distill it down to like a specific score or number is really like doing a disservice to this idea of like what is your website speed. It's not this like core number, and I think one of the reasons why it's such a hot topic right now is people do know that it's related to user experience and things like SEO, but it is one of those things where it is not just some score that you go from an 80 to an 85 and now you have content that ranks higher. An 80 for me and an 80 for you on your site are actually different scores, believe it or not, because Google is actually looking at the average on your site, different user experiences and things along those lines. So if all of your users are browsing on a 2G device, what do you think the chances are your website speed is really, really fast?
It's probably very unlikely if they're on 2G.
Right. I don't even know if 2G is a thing anymore.
No, I complain when I'm on 3G, and I'm just like, nothing loads.
Well, there are parts of the world where 2G is a thing, and that is a real thing you have to consider with your site. And so one of the best ways to really understand, how do I think the fundamental question people always say is, well, if these tools aren't good at measuring website speed, how should I measure it? And it's to understand inside of developer tools or the Chrome user experience reports, which are not the Google page speed tools. It's a different thing. You want to be able to look at the waterfall and be able to see what is actually slowing it down. So look at things like DOM interactive. It's a really good metric at being able, or what's called timed interactive. It's basically when does the stuff that the user sees load and how quickly can they actually scroll through and see it. And then time to first paint, it's like when something actually shows up on the screen. Those are really important. Google is doing a better job of showing those in the user experience reports, but we all know that there's different things that can take a while to load on a page. And so being able to dig in and figure out what those things that are loading slow are is really important. So in the waterfall, which you've seen that in developer tools, right? It's like all the lines everywhere. It's not the easiest thing to read in the world, right?
Right.
So being able to look at that, you can go through, and when you see those long lines, it should line up with a time frame at the top. And that'll allow you to basically look at and see how long is it taking for something to load. And a lot of times you'll find out it's a social media widget, or it's a call that you have an icon down at the bottom that's calling out to Facebook or something like that, and it's actually that call that's taking a long time. So if you've ever thrown your site into a tool or a load report and you're like, I haven't changed anything, but it's slower loading today, it may be taking longer for Facebook to respond to that request in your social media widget or something like that than it did before. And so it's not always as simple as, I'm going to do this one thing and I'm going to make my website so much faster.
Right. There's a little bit of investigation that you kind of have to dig into.
Right. And so I think it's one of those things that if you think, well, speed is something that I should be able pretty easily to improve and then I'm going to get more traffic, I think we're looking at it the wrong way. You really need to be looking at your site in terms of performance. Like, how do I make my website just a better performing website? And one way to do that is to better understand what types of things might be slowing it down. And not like I did this and now it measures slower in a page speed tool, but looking at your site. Is it taking longer to call the servers? Is it taking longer for certain scripts to load? Certain WordPress themes are way faster than others because some are just filled with junk,
Ooh. Well, all things to kind of start studying up on. We've given them homework.
So thank you guys for joining us on Inside the Publisher Lab. We hope that you will take the time to subscribe to the channel. We have a playlist now, so you can actually subscribe to the playlist and watch all the episodes. And if you're not a podcast listener of the Publisher Lab, the OG Publisher Lab, we hope that you'll check us out on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever podcasts are found.